What's going on, boxing family? Hope you all having a blessed day. In this video, we're going to be talking about Terence Crawford and the potential fight against Showtime Shawn Porter. Hit that like button and subscribe for more boxing news. Now let's dig right into it. Terence Crawford is obviously looking forward to fighting Manny Pacquiao or Errol Spence Jr. in 2021. What struck me a little bit odd in recent interviews is how much he wants for these fights as a split. He says he wants a 50-50 with Manny Pacquiao and a 60-40 with Spence Jr. How the hell does he want that? I mean, come on, 50-50 with Pacquiao. Pacquiao has been doing this for decades, my man. Pacquiao is not only one of the biggest stars in the sports and has been one of the biggest stars in the sports for longer than you've been fighting pro, but I mean, this gentleman doesn't see that he's not bringing all that much to the table. In fact, it'd be a good idea to take that 60-40 with Errol Spence Jr. Errol Spence Jr. just recently at the Caleb Smith fight had an interview there, and he said that he feels like he deserves the lion's share. He feels like he deserves a 70-30 or whatever the market dictates, and a lot of people are in agreement with that. Both men have had their own sets of pay-per-views, and Errol Spence Jr. has definitely outperformed Terence Crawford in that department. Now, we're not talking about skills and talent. We're talking strictly about numbers and what they reel in. And Errol Spence Jr. definitely has a stronger foothold in that market, in that terrain, in that field. Anyway, I think Terence Crawford is also very aware of how unmarketable he could come off as. And in one of the interviews, he stated that, he's aware of that he just wants to sit back and, he doesn't enjoy the conversations and the questions and the talking and the media and none of that. He just wants to be there, show up, get the job done, keep it moving. This is what he had to say in that respect. He's not marketable. I always told him, I'm unmarketable, but y'all can't market. These guys that come here from different countries that can't even speak English, they're just sitting up here and like, I'm ready. And you talk about them being marketable. No, my guy. Look at Manny Pacquiao's trajectory throughout, being stateside. He comes over from a foreign country, so he brings in all those fans from his home country, plus those fans that are here stateside from that set country or have roots to that country. And not only that, he brought an explosive dynamic style that a lot of people wanted to see. So all of a sudden he becomes a mega superstar because he's not only producing good fights, he's winning in spectacular fashion, and he brought in his own fan base from the get-go. So there's a lot of things that it's not just like random fighters from foreign fighters are showing up and making names for themselves and becoming superstars without saying a word. No, they also put in that legwork and they do what they have to do in order for them to reach stardom. And a lot of them don't even make it that far because either they're lacking something in one of the departments, it being talent, skill, or marketability, or whatever it may be. They just don't have the fan base, and a lot of them don't reach those heights. Now back to the talk. I know that Shawn Porter wants all that smoke, and he says that he's the WBO mandatory challenger, and he really wants to go after Terence Crawford. But first and foremost, when asked about that fight, Terence Crawford had to say, of course, that's my mandatory. If he exercises his mandatory and goes to the WBO and says, I need that fight, then that fight will have to happen unless I have other obligations with the unification. And those other unification fights or other fights that could inhibit this would be Errol Spence or Manny Pacquiao. If those fights don't get made, then Terence Crawford goes to state he will have to fight Shawn Porter. I think that's good to know that Shawn Porter is on Terence Crawford's mind, and the fact that it's Shawn Porter, the name that is being brought up, I think that's going to be a hell of a fight. I mean, nobody has tested Terence Crawford yet. Nobody has fought him in the style that Shawn Porter has. He's a pressure fighter that gets in there, mauls you down. He gets dirty sometimes, and he's very physical, and nobody has fought Terence Crawford in that manner, and I don't think anybody will other than Shawn Porter. And I definitely want to see that fight because Shawn Porter always goes out there and gives them hell, man. Like, he has 3 losses, but they've all been pretty competitive. He's never been in a fight where, oh yeah, my man's losing, he lost every round or whatever it may be, and he has that fighting spirit and shows up. My man's is a warrior, like most definitely a warrior. He's lost to Kell Brook in his prime, Keith Thurman in his prime, and Errol Spence Jr., and those were all pretty good fights, and I think he'd give Terence Crawford a hell of a fight, and it definitely, most definitely be the best win on Terence Crawford's welterweight run and or potentially his whole entire resume. In the Last Stand podcast with Brian Custer, Porter did say that if that fight does happen in 2021, they're looking at April or May. This is also what he had to say, and I quote, this is Shawn Porter: "A lot like me talking on Errol Spence Jr. I know what I can do, and you give me an opportunity, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to let anything stop me, you know? So really, the only thing stopping me, preventing me from fighting Terence Crawford is the fact that he and I both haven't said yes. If he's willing to say yes, the fight will happen. But that's one fight that I really am not going to, at least I don't think. I'm going to really pressure because that's something I just never really saw myself doing. I never saw myself fighting Terence Crawford. But because everybody says they want that fight, now I'm starting to manifest it myself. I'm not even gonna lie to you, BC. I was hitting the bag last night in the dark, and on my mind was Terence Crawford. So it is what it is. So now Shawn Porter is starting to see himself fight Terence Crawford. He's seeing it in his mind. He's able to play it out, and that's definitely a good thing. I think a motivated Shawn Porter, which I've never seen him not motivated, is definitely a threat in the division. Last time Shawn Porter and Terence Crawford talked was in July, and apparently Shawn asked Bud if they were gonna throw down and have a little scrap, and Bud said he was working on something big. At that point in time, we didn't know about the Kell Brook fight yet. We don't know if that was what he was referencing or if he had something else cooking, but nonetheless, now we are hopefully gonna be talking about the fight for 2021, and there's already good framework laid down, and hopefully it facilitates the opportunity of them both guys meeting. I think Shawn Porter is under the impression that Terence Crawford will make a move in the jump to the PBC, especially with the stable being much deeper, the money being over there for the welterweight division, and I think that would definitely help out Terence Crawford. I mean, my man is 33 years old. He's getting up there, and he needs to get those signature wins before he rides off into the sunset. He does have the talent, he does have the ability, he just does not have that resume. He does not have that talent pool available to him to take on those names and make a solid case for himself as one of the greatest fighters of this decade or whatever it may be, because we don't know, aside from the eye test, what he really brings to the table. He's never really faced adversity because he's never faced a higher level of opponent or a higher caliber level of opponent with those skill sets that are going to push him to test himself and see where his heart is at. And I think that potentially if he makes that jump at the PBC, he does have that opportunity to see how far he could really push himself, or if Top Rank and the PBC end up working together, I think it'll be a good thing for the sport. A lot of great fights are not happening because of all these differences between promoters. Anyway, I can't wait for this fight to go down. If it does go down, I can't wait for more talk about it. I really hope it does happen. I really want to see how Terence Crawford is going to react to somebody that smothers him, is very physical, is very strong, is very big, and just rushes in there. It's going to be a nice stylistic clash. It's going to be the Matador against the Raging Bull, and it's gonna definitely be a good fight. I think I can't wait if it does happen. I'm excited about this one. If we don't get the other two next year, I think this is definitely one to look forward to. Anyway, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for some more boxing talk. Hit that like, subscribe, and stay blessed, my family.